We've all been there before. You're rushing through an airport, you're running late for the flight, and you're starving. But then you see a generically named restaurant called New York Deli. You think, perfect, I know exactly what I'm getting. Except that New York Deli restaurant doesn't exist. Not in New York, not anywhere. It was made up just for the airport. And the same can be said about other generic named restaurants that take up half the terminals, like Poppy's Bagels or Soho Bistro. They look like real restaurants, but they're not. They're generic invented storefronts designed to make you feel comfortable so that you feel good about handing over $18 for a sandwich. And the crazy part is, airports make up 59% of their non-flight revenue through restaurants like this. Today, we're pulling the curtains back on these restaurants that only exist within airports. Who's behind them, and how have they turned this fake dining experience into a billion-dollar business? So, here's how they get away with it. Once you're through security, you're trapped. You can't walk down the street to a diner. You can't hop in the car and hit a drive-thru. The airport has a literal monopoly on your food choices. So when you're hungry and your flight's boarding in an hour, you don't ask questions. You see Poppy's Bagels and think, sure, that looks safe, even though Poppy's Bagels doesn't exist anywhere outside of these four walls. And here's the thing most travelers don't realize. Those restaurants aren't run by the brands you see on the sign. That Starbucks at your gate, probably not run by a Starbucks. And that Chili's, not really a Chili's. Instead, they're ran by a handful of massive companies called concessionaires. Names like HMS Host, OTG, or SSP America. These are the shadow players who win contracts from airports, build out the space, hire the staff, order the food, and then either license a brand or just invent one from scratch. So when you sit down at Soho Bistro, there is no Soho or Bistro. Just a concessionaire who thought that the name sounded safe and kind of upscale. And if you sit down at a Starbucks in the same terminal, odds are it's the exact same company running that too. The menu looks different, but the management, the kitchen staff, and even the supply chain might be identical. And that's all a part of the system. Airports don't want dozens of small restaurant owners to deal with. They want a single operator they can hold responsible. So they hand the key over to these giant concessionaires, and in exchange, they get a cut of every overpriced sandwich you buy. But here's where things get really weird. If these concessionaires already run Starbucks and Chili's inside airports, why bother making up fake restaurants? The answer? Money and flexibility. See, if you license a big name like Shake Shack, you've got to pay fees, follow their rules, and keep up with their standards. That cuts into profits. But if you invent Urban Taco out of thin air, there's no franchise fees, no corporate oversight, and no angry brand manager breathing down your neck if the food tastes like microwaved cardboard. And the names are chosen carefully. They're not called cheap airport food stands. They're called something generic that almost sounds familiar. Stuff like New York Deli, Hudson Grill, or Roots and Grains. They trick your brain into thinking, yeah, I've seen that before somewhere, right? And it feels safe enough that you don't just walk past. Airports even lean into the local flavors cards with some of these spots. You'll see signs like Taste of Nashville Barbecue or Authentic Seattle Coffee. But most of the time, the local restaurant is just a concept dreamed up by a concessionaire, borrowing a city name to make you feel like you're getting something authentic. It's all just a marketing illusion. And once you start to notice it, you realize that half the places in the airport are only places that exist in an airport. But here's the biggest reason why these fake restaurants exist. It's to get around the fair pricing rule. See, a lot of airports in the cities that they're in have something called a fair price ordinance. It basically says if you're running a restaurant in the airport, you can't gouge people just because they're trapped past security. You're allowed to charge maybe 10% more than what the exact same restaurant is outside the airport. So if there's a Chili's in town selling a burger for $15, the Chili's inside the airport can't charge more than about $16.50. But here's the thing. If the restaurant doesn't exist outside of the airport, there's nothing to compare it to. No benchmark and no fair price limit. That means that these generic restaurants can charge whatever they want. $20 for a sandwich, $10 for a coffee. Why not? Completely legal. And because travelers are stressed, rushed, and usually don't have options, they'll pay it. That's why these generic concepts are so common. They aren't just fillers, they're loopholes with menus. And if you think about it, airports in general have just become shopping malls with planes attached to them. Walk through any major terminal and you'll notice there's almost as many retail stores as there are gates. Sunglass Hut, Brookstone, Gucci, Versace. I mean, it's insane. And that shift didn't just happen by accident. For airports, retail and dining, what they call non-flight revenue, now make up a massive slice of income. In some airports, it's over half. That means they make more money selling you overpriced trail mix and duty-free perfume than they do on actual flights. So the food isn't just about feeding passengers anymore. It's to keep you walking around like you're in a mall with your wallet open. And once you see airports this way, it explains why these restaurants all feel so fake. They're not trying to be authentic dining experiences, they're just all a part of this big shopping ecosystem that is an airport. And here's another little trick. All of those restaurants aren't even different from one another. Behind the walls, multiple restaurants often share the same kitchen space. So that Poppy's Bagels, the Soho Bistro, or the local tap room you see in a row, they might all be running out one giant back hallway kitchen with the same staff and the same prep stations. It's efficient for the concessionaires. They only need one set of workers, one delivery schedule, and one set of equipment. Then they just slap on a different logo, print slightly different menus, and then say that there's an illusion of choice. But in practice, the food often comes from the same freezer, the same fryer, and the same walk-in cooler. It is smart business, but it makes the whole thing feel lifeless. So why do airports go along with this? Why not let real restaurants set up shop and give customers something more authentic? Well, it's because airports want partners who can handle massive scale. Food deliveries that pass through security, staff who can work odd hours, menus that meet safety regulations, and operations that never shut down. That rules out most mom and pop shops. They just can't handle the complexity. But companies like HMS Host or OTG, they specialize in this. They can guarantee the airport a consistent cut of revenue no matter what. And from the airport's perspective, it doesn't really matter if the food is bland or forgettable. What matters is predictability. So when you see 3 or 4 fake restaurants in a row, that's not an accident. That's the system working exactly as designed. And this is why airport dining always feels off. Think about it. Food is supposed to have a sense of place. A bagel shop in New York should have a different feel than a taco spot in Austin. But inside the airport, the identity just gets stripped away. Instead of personality, everything gets flattened into a safe corporate version of dining. You have logos that look like clip art, menus that feel like they were designed by a focus group, and food that's never terrible, but never good enough to actually remember. It's not about making you happy, it's about making you compliant. Hungry enough to buy, but not picky enough to notice you've been tricked into eating the same meal under a different sign. Now, to be fair, not every airport restaurant is fake. Some airports have actually made a real effort to bring in some authentic spots. Like Austin's airport has barbecue from Salt Lick. Portland has Stumptown Coffee. In Atlanta, you can grab Pascal's Fried Chicken, a local institution since the 1940s. And when airports do this, people notice. Travelers remember. It gives the airport character, and it makes the experience just a little less miserable. But here's the catch. Even those local spots are often still run by concessionaires behind the scenes. The name and the recipes might come from a real place, but the management, the supply chain, the pricing, all still filtered through the same middlemen. So even when it feels authentic, you're still playing within the same system. And when you zoom out, these restaurants are just a symptom of the bigger picture. Airports aren't even about travel anymore. They're about controlling the environment so you spend as much money as possible while you wait. That's why everything feels so sterile. That's why all the signs point you past shops. That's why dining feels more like a mall food court than an actual restaurant scene. And it works. Airports pull in billions of dollars from this non-flight revenue, which means your ticket isn't the only way they profit from you. So the next time you walk through these airports and you see one of these generically named restaurants, you'll know a little bit more about what's going on. It's not about serving you great food. It's about squeezing as many dollars as they can out of your pocket. The fake restaurants, the generic bars, the overpriced menus, they're all a part of the same carefully designed system. And honestly, I hate it. I hate how lifeless it all feels. Airports are already stressful enough, but the fact that they've basically just become malls with runways doesn't help. But I want to hear what you think. Have you noticed these fake restaurants when you travel? Maybe you like them. Maybe you have some really good experiences with it. And if you've ever had a great airport meal, let me know where in the comments, because those seem to be very rare. Drop your thoughts in the comments and I'll highlight my favorite ones in a future video. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.